Welcome to Category Management Knowledge Group's course preview on fact-based selling. The combination of an increasingly complex world, the vast proliferation of data, and the need to stay one step ahead of the competition has sharpened focus on using analytics within organizations. When making any kind of presentation that presents business issues or opportunities, effective use of industry, market, and consumer data can build your image as an expert on the categories in which you're presenting. In the full course, you learn how to turn data into insights and how to add these fact-based insights into your presentation. You will also learn how to quantify business issues and opportunities, as well as identify practical, action-based solutions. We will only partially cover these objectives in this course preview. The combination of an increasingly complex world, the vast proliferation of data, and the need to stay one step ahead of the competition has sharpened focus on using analytics within organizations. But it's not just about completing the analytics. It's about selling the action and opportunities to internal or external buyers. Have you ever been in the middle of a presentation and felt like you were losing your buyer, or maybe you never engaged them from the beginning? Maybe your presentation was completely off track because you didn't consider the conditions and needs of your buyer, or that you'd failed to identify the correct business opportunity, or that your information wasn't compelling enough to make the sale. Well, you're not the only one who may have been in this situation. More often than not, the problem arises from presenting without facts, or from not presenting the relevant facts in a powerful and compelling way. When making any kind of presentation that presents business issues or opportunities, effective use of industry, market, and consumer data can build your image as an expert on the categories in which you're presenting. And these facts can help you to tell a compelling story that's aligned to your buyer's conditions and needs. There are different buyer and seller scenarios where a fact-based sales presentation is required. For example, it may be the account manager or sales director going to call on the category manager or business unit lead at the retailer. Or it may be the category analyst or vendor advisor making a call to the category manager, or someone else in the retail organization responsible for different components of the category review process. It could also be the retailer's category manager selling a new promotion or plan to an account manager or sales director. Selling also takes place internally within retailers and vendors, across departments and teams. Like the category manager at the retailer selling an idea or concept to their business unit lead or manager. Or a vendor's category analyst or category management director selling an idea or concept to a marketing director or sales director within their organization. So when we refer to the seller and buyer throughout this course, realize the concepts and analogies are relevant across multiple types of relationships. Meet Montel, our seller, and Jamie, our buyer. We'll be referring to seller and buyer examples primarily based on the vendor to the retailer in our examples, but the learnings can be applied to the different situations. So how do you create a fact-based presentation with logical flow that engages your buyer and sells them on the overall objectives of your presentation? You follow a critical thinking framework to create a logically flowing presentation. Follow an effective presentation structure. Add in insights that are gleaned from the data and analysis that you've completed, and your results will be fact-based presentation. Critical thinking gives a framework to help you develop fact-based selling skills to help you develop presentations that will deliver results. Let's review two helpful definitions of critical thinking. First, the process of conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluating information to reach an answer or conclusion. And second, Disciplined thinking that is clear, rational, open-minded, and informed by evidence. When we develop presentations that follow the critical thinking framework, we create sound, objective, and logic arguments that persuade our audience. Using critical thinking skills will ensure that we have a meaningful conversation with our business partners. This way of thinking requires that we don't simply accept the arguments and conclusions that we're presented with, but rather have an attitude involving examining and questioning the arguments and conclusions in order to identify the optimum course of action. Here are some other important definitions related to critical thinking. The conclusion is the main point that you're trying to prove, also called the position. It can be an opportunity, a recommendation, or an issue that you're trying to solve. Premises or reasons are evidence given to support the conclusion. Co-premises are the subset of reasons that you are using to support the conclusion. Objections are reasons that a claim is false or evidence against a claim. And a rebuttal is an objection to an objection. We're going to go through these concepts in more depth. Whenever someone gives reason to support a claim, they're giving an argument. There are 3 simple steps to follow when you analyze an argument. First step, identify the conclusion of the argument or the main point that you're trying to prove or claim. For example, fix the shelf space on brand A. Second step, identify the premises of the argument or the evidence to support your conclusion. For example, retailer has lost market share in category A due to poor performance on brand A. They are also poorly developed in the category. And finally, the third step, give numbers to each part of the argument. You want to provide relevant numbers to support the premises. In the full course, we demonstrate how to analyze an argument in detail, but won't cover that in this course preview. Once we cover the critical thinking framework, we show you how to incorporate your sales presentations into the critical thinking framework. This is a 5-step model we use in our training. As you develop your fact-based presentation, you should incorporate your newly learned critical thinking framework into it. This will ensure that your arguments are objective, sound, logic, and are supported by the right evidence. Also, this map will help you to anticipate and address potential objections. It's also important to remember that there are different seller-to-buyer relationships, and that there are many scenarios in organizations, both internally and externally, that you may be required to sell something. The summary of the situation is where the buyer's interest is generated and leads to the statement of the idea. Once again, data can be used to help establish credibility and a common ground in the summary of the situation, to show your buyer that you understand the current situation. The summary should consider buyer's current conditions, needs, limitations, and/or opportunities, which need to tie in with the overall purpose of the presentation. For internal presentations, a good summary of the situation requires a strong understanding of the retailer's overall strategy and short and long-term objectives and focus areas in the business. For the rest of the course, we walk through an example with Montel, the seller, in creating a fact-based summary of the situation, which is where most of the fact-based presentation is incorporated. At the end of summarizing the situation, Montel obtains agreement from Jamie that what was covered in the summary is of interest to her. Once he completed his fact-based summary of the situation, his buyer should have a good understanding of what the idea in the presentation is, and should indicate a certain level of buy-in to the idea. Let's summarize what's covered in this fact-based selling course. When using the 5-step presentation process, the fact-based portion comes into play in Summarize the Situation. The rest of the presentation ties in with the steps that were already covered in the presentation and PowerPoint training course. In the Explain How It Works step, more detail about the assortment analysis on the premium segment should be introduced, including the SKUs that should be listed and delisted. You learn how to ensure that your critical thinking framework is incorporated into the presentation, creating arguments that include fact-based conclusions and premises to make your store logical and relevant. Finally, we cover the 10, 20, 30 guidelines for your presentation. At the end of the course, you'll have the tools necessary to create compelling, fact-based presentations. So where do you go from here? If you're interested in purchasing the certified course on fact-based selling, or would like to work with us to help you determine training opportunities for you, your team, or your organization that will help you move to a more fact-based selling organization, please contact us. We don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach and will consult with you to ensure that what we deliver meets your specific needs and business issues. We hope to hear from you soon. Have an excellent day.